Before we begin, let me tell you, this is one of the most unbelievable true frontier stories ever told. A lone rancher, a dying giant Apache girl, and a shocking decision that changed the destiny of an entire tribe. What happened over the next 24 hours is something no history book ever prepared the world for. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe, share this video, and drop your thoughts in the comments because you're about to hear a story so powerful, so rare, and so emotional that it will stay with you long after the screen goes dark. Now, let's start this video. The desert wind carried a strange cry across the fading light, a sound that didn't belong to any animal Sam Hart had ever heard. It sliced through the stillness like a warning or a plea, echoing against the canyon walls. Sam tightened his grip on the reins, eyes narrowing as the sky burned with dying orange and purple. It was the kind of sound a man couldn't ignore, even if every instinct told him danger was near. And in the wild frontier, danger was never more than a breath away. Sam rode toward the ravine, guiding his horse carefully through the uneven ground. The cry grew faint but desperate, as though whoever made it was running out of strength. When Sam reached the edge of the rocks, he dismounted, boots crunching quietly on the dry earth. He followed the sound down a narrow slope, heart pounding with the kind of tension that came only when a man knew he was walking into the unknown. Then he saw her, at first just a shadow, then a shape, then a wounded human being. She lay trapped between jagged stones, her limbs scraped, her body bruised. But what truly froze Sam in place was her size. She wasn't just tall, she was enormous for her age, built like someone born to carry the weight of mountains. An Apache girl, no older than 15, but with the frame of a young warrior. Blood stained her clothes, and her breaths were shallow, barely clinging to life. Her eyes fluttered open, dark and fierce, filled with pain and pride even in weakness. Sam knelt beside her, his voice low and steady. He knew the risks. Apache didn't trust white men, and a white man touching an Apache child, let alone a chief's daughter, could invite a death sentence. But he also knew that leaving her here meant letting her die, and that wasn't something Sam Hart could live with. "Easy," he whispered, sliding a hand under her shoulders. "I'm here to help you." She didn't respond in words, only a faint breath that trembled like a collapsing fire. Lifting her was like lifting a fallen tree. She was heavy, nearly as tall as he was, her body limp with exhaustion. Sam gritted his teeth, cradling her carefully, and carried her toward his horse. The sun had nearly disappeared, and the desert cold was creeping in fast. He placed her gently in front of him, wrapped his arms around her to keep her steady, and rode hard through the darkness. Every hoofbeat felt like a countdown, every gust of cold air a reminder of how little time she had left. When Sam reached his ranch, he wasted no time. He carried the girl inside, placing her near the fireplace where warmth could fight the chill on her skin. He cleaned her wounds with gentle hands, muttering calm reassurances even though she couldn't understand his words. He wrapped her injuries, offered water, and stoked the fire until its glow filled the entire room. The girl watched him silently through half-closed eyes, suspicious but too weak to resist. Her breaths were ragged, but slowly, very slowly, they steadied. Hours passed. The fire cracked beside them, and Sam stayed awake through the night, checking her fever, feeding her small sips of warm broth, and making sure she never slipped into unconsciousness for too long. There was something unique about her, something noble. She wasn't just any Apache girl. Sam didn't know who she was, but he could feel the weight of her importance in the air. She had the presence of someone who mattered deeply to her people. Just before dawn, she whispered a single word, her name, Naylin. Her voice was fragile yet proud. Sam nodded softly. "You're safe, Naylin," he said. But even as he spoke, he knew safety was a fragile thing. The sun had barely begun to rise when he stepped outside to draw water from the well. The morning air was cold, sharp, and quiet, too quiet. That was when he felt the ground tremble, not from nature, but from hooves, many hooves. He turned slowly. Across the horizon, riding in formation like shadows carved from stone, came more than 20 Apache warriors. Their horses moved with silent power, their spears gleaming under the new sunlight. These were not ordinary scouts or wanderers. These were elite riders, warriors with painted faces, hard expressions, and eyes that missed nothing. They weren't riding at random. They were coming straight toward his ranch. Sam's breath tightened. The sight of Apache was never casual, not at dawn, not in numbers, not with weapons raised. He stepped forward, not raising his hands but keeping them visible. In the frontier, fear could get a man killed faster than a bullet. The riders drew closer, forming a tight half-circle around his home. The leader, a broad, towering man with a stern jaw and ceremonial markings, dismounted with fluid command. Without acknowledgement, he pushed past Sam and walked into the house. Sam followed at a respectful distance, tension coiling inside him like a struck rattlesnake. The chief stopped the moment he saw Nayland lying near the fire. His entire face changed, relief washed over him so raw and fierce that even Sam felt it in his chest. He knelt beside her, touching her cheek gently, whispering in Apache, his voice shaking with something like love and fear mixed together. Nayland opened her eyes barely. She spoke to him in broken breaths, telling him what had happened in words Sam couldn't understand. The chief listened, nodding, eyes burning with rising emotion. Then he turned to Sam, slowly, powerfully, like a man assessing the soul of another. Sam didn't move. He met the chief's gaze with steady calm, though he knew one wrong word could end everything. The chief spoke finally, his English rough but clear. "You saved her. She is the daughter of our war leader. She is our future." Sam remained silent. There was nothing to say that wouldn't sound small in a moment this big. The chief stepped forward, towering, his presence almost overwhelming. He studied Sam's worn face, his steady eyes, his tired hands still stained with dried blood from tending the girl. And then, something unexpected happened. The chief extended his hand. Not in anger, not in threat, but in respect. The story pauses there, tension high, destiny shifting, and the next decision about to change Sam Hart's life forever. The moment the Apache chief extended his hand, the room seemed to hold its breath. The fire crackled softly, Nayland's weak breathing filled the silence, and Sam realized this was no ordinary gesture. This was an honor rarely given, and never lightly. Sam accepted the handshake slowly, firmly, aware that this single moment bridged a gap carved by decades of blood, mistrust, and loss. The chief released his hand, but continued to study him with deep, measuring eyes, as though searching for the truth of Sam's character behind the rugged lines of his face. The chief stepped back toward Nayland, speaking quietly in his own tongue before turning to Sam once more. "She was taken by men from the south," he said. "Traders, slavers, she fought, they hurt her, she ran, but she fell." His voice broke slightly at the memory. "We searched all night, we thought she died." Sam nodded, feeling the weight of what the chief must have endured. In this brutal land, a lost daughter was often a forever daughter. But Nayland had survived long enough to cry for help, and Providence, or fate, had placed Sam Hart close enough to hear her. The chief stood tall again, the authority of his position returning like a mantle across his shoulders. "Because of you," he said slowly, "she lives." He gestured toward the warriors gathered outside. "Our people know loyalty. We repay life with life, debt with honor." Sam felt a knot form in his throat. He wasn't expecting reward or recognition. He had acted simply because no decent man would leave a child to die alone. But Apache didn't see it as small kindness. They saw it as salvation, an act that demanded returned loyalty. The chief motioned for two warriors to approach. They entered with quiet, disciplined steps, each carrying wrapped bundles. They placed them gently near Sam's feet and stepped back. The chief nodded for Sam to open them. Inside the first bundle lay a beautifully crafted blanket, woven with traditional Apache designs, symbols of protection, strength, and respect. The second bundle held something even more valuable, a ceremonial bow and arrows carved from sacred wood, polished and decorated with feathers and beads. Sam's breath caught. Gifts like these weren't just tokens. They were acknowledgments, bonds, promises of peace. But before he could speak, the chief stepped closer, lowering his voice. "These are yours," he said, "but they are not our decision. There is more." His tone shifted, heavy with meaning. Sam felt the air tighten around them. The chief looked at Nayland, then back at Sam again, as though weighing a choice far greater than simple gratitude. Then the chief spoke the words Sam never expected. "My daughter has chosen your home as the place she wishes to heal. She says she trusts you. She wants to stay until she is strong again." Sam blinked slowly, caught between disbelief and understanding. Nayland, weak as she was, turned her head toward him. Her eyes were soft, not fearful, not distant, but steady with a quiet trust he didn't know he'd earned. She had seen death, cruelty, and darkness. Yet somehow, she found safety under his roof. Sam nodded gently. "She can stay," he said, "as long as she needs." The chief inclined his head in deep respect, but Sam sensed there was still something else, something heavier. The chief hesitated, as though searching for the right words to bridge two worlds. Finally, he said, "Our council met before we came. If you had harmed her, we would have taken your life. But you saved her, and so we offer you something rare, something sacred." Sam stood silently, heart beating slow and heavy. The chief's voice deepened like thunder rolling across distant hills. "We offer you alliance, our protection, our friendship. When a man saves a future leader of our people, he becomes part of our story." Sam wasn't sure what to say. This was more than a thank you. It was a shift that could alter his entire existence. An alliance with the Apache was something settlers prayed for but rarely received. It meant safety. It meant community. It meant trust, where trust was almost unheard of. Sam cleared his throat. "I'm honored," he said simply. The chief's expression softened. He extended his hand again, this time not as a gesture of gratitude, but as a promise. Sam took it, sealing a bond stronger than any bargain he'd ever known. The warriors began preparing to leave, but the chief remained by Naelin's side, speaking to her softly. She listened with closed eyes, nodding slowly. When he rose to depart, he placed his hand gently on her forehead, blessing her, then turned towards Sam. "Care for her," he said. "She is strong. She will rise again." Sam nodded, his voice steady. "I will." The Apache riders mounted their horses, forming a line against the morning sun. The chief paused before leaving, his deep voice carrying across the silent land. "If danger comes," he said, "light a fire on the hill behind your house. We will come." With that, he raised his hand in farewell. The riders turned and galloped into the distance, their silhouettes shrinking until they blended into the desert horizon. Days passed. Naelin healed slowly, quietly, her strength returning piece by piece. Sam helped her walk again, taught her simple English words, listened to her soft Apache stories in broken fragments. She laughed sometimes, small, rare sounds that reminded him she was still just a child, despite her warrior spirit. In return, she helped around the ranch, tending to the animals, learning his routines, adapting to his quiet world with surprising ease. Over time, a deep bond formed between them, something like trust, something like family. Sam would never replace her people, and she would never forget her tribe, but in the space between their worlds, they built something rare: respect, healing, gratitude, humanity. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky blazed crimson, Naelin stood outside staring toward the horizon. Sam joined her quietly. She looked up at him and spoke in slow, careful English. "You saved me," she said. "My people will never forget." Sam shook his head gently. "Anyone would have done the same," he replied. Naelin smiled faintly. "No, not anyone." When the Apache returned weeks later to bring Naelin home, she embraced Sam tightly before leaving, her eyes shining with gratitude and strength reborn. The chief thanked him once more, but this time the bond between them needed no words. And long after Naelin disappeared into the desert with her people, a bow hung on Sam Hart's wall, a sacred blanket draped across his chair, and a promise etched forever into his life, that on one quiet night, when a dying cry pierced the wilderness, he chose compassion over fear, and the Apache chose him as family.